So hey you guys, you may have just clicked on this video coming off of the full review of this Acer Nitro XV282K. This of course is the 4K 144 Hertz, 1 millisecond response rate, 4K HDMI 2.1, 120 Hertz console ready, and Xbox certified display gaming monitor. I know that's a mouthful, but today we're going to be testing out the Xbox Series S exclusively. You can see it right there. We've got the Xbox Series S fired up. We're going to test a host of games, check the settings, and give you just a quick kind of overview on how well it performed with that Series S. So let's just jump right into it. So before we go too far ahead, I want to let you guys know there's a fantastic channel we have built out for you. Tons of playlists on that home page. Seriously, you just go to our home page. There's something there for you. It's going to be around gaming monitors, PC gear, gaming gear, things like that, all on that home page. So go check it out, and while you're there, hit subscribe, hit that like button, and then if you have any questions, just comment below. I try to get back to everybody as soon as I possibly can. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the menus and setup here and kind of see what it takes to get this 4K 120 Hertz VRR unlocked. So I actually have HDR turned on the display. It is the HDR preset, and we're going to see how that links up with the display itself. Now, something you may have to do within the menu of the actual monitor itself, there's an HDMI 2.1 option to turn on and off. So that can be found within the system settings. Then you scroll down to the bottom, it says HDMI 2.1. There's an on or off button. You turn it on. Obviously, we want to use HDMI 2.1. This is what I have checked. I have variable refresh rate checked. Allow HDR 10 checked. Auto HDR check. Allow 4K check. Allow YCC 4.2.2 check. So we see here within the menus, we are getting that 4K 120 Hertz experience, and it is showing that variable refresh rate is enabled. But I do want to mention something, and it's kind of important when it comes to a monitor like this, and it's the fact that much like the M28U from Gigabyte, the full bandwidth of HDMI 2.1 is not available. It is using, for lack of better terms, display stream compression or some sort of chroma subsampling 4.2.0 in order to get full 4K 120 Hertz HDR mode. That may present some limitations, although developers would tell you that 4.2.0 doesn't give you any difference in clarity that you can perceive to a degree. Maybe if this were an HDR 1000 or above certification, we might be able to see some difference in HDR performance, but I don't think we're going to see it here. So I kind of have an expectation as to how this is going to go. I did a full review on this and went really in depth on the performance of this monitor on a few games, probably like 5 games. If you want to know more about like the menus, the setup, and just overall performance using PC and how that relates to console, go check out that video. I'll put it in the description. I tested 5 games. We're probably only going to test about 3, maybe 4 games today. Keep it quick, nice and light. So I have an idea as to how this is going to go. But we're going to start with probably my favorite game right now, which is Back 4 Blood. Whoa, just kind of switched there. It did a weird thingy. Aha, it knocked in that variable refresh rate we see. And 118, 120, looks like it might even be dropping down just a little bit there. I know, interesting sound effect I made there. Ooh, this game is kind of always this way. Even as you pan, like you can see I'm getting 120 frames per second, but even as I pan, it kind of has that lag. It's not a response time as far as like input lag, but it is a bit of world motion blur. Like you can just really see it as you move and pan around. It's just very clear it's not PC, and the smearing is very evident. And that has a lot to do with the pixel response rate. I mean, it's not bad. This gameplay is actually quite enjoyable. You know, I am getting a good amount of detail. The rays of light here shining down onto the street, giving me a bit of that kind of ray traced feel to it. So there is some depth in color here. It's not perfect. I would say the biggest drawback is probably going to be that response rate and the fact that, you know, there is a bit of smearing. There's a bit of that motion blur that just takes away from the experience and feels like a bit of lag as you pan around the world. And if you have fast motion, that can be a bit of a challenge. But black level performance and overall contrast is looking good so far in this game. So I'm going to back out. We're going to test out some other games as well. So one of the biggest issues I've had with 1440p gaming on the Xbox Series S and X is the fact that this game, this specific game, Call of Duty Warzone, has an issue with overall HDR texture packs. And it creates this haziness to the game that I think they're addressing within, because they did make some updates to the HDR texture packs and allowing them to be streamed while playing. But in the short term, it's been a challenge because one of my favorite games to play is Warzone. And I know many of you out there want the same thing. And with 1440p, the overall contrast and graphic quality is pretty poor. It's subpar in my opinion, especially when you compare it to Cold War, Fortnite, other games that are very similar. So one of the things that HDMI 2.1 does for you is allows for those HDR texture packs to be reintroduced or streamed in your game. And they give you just the clarity and contrast with that 120 hertz variable refresh rate that you can demand from something like a PC in your console. This is why I would recommend this monitor, right? Is to be able to play something like Warzone, fast-paced, but still graphically intensive. All right, so this is a pretty far cry from a 3090, that's for sure. I mean, you do kind of get this pixelated view out here, further out in the map, and very flat surfaces as far as the texture on the ground. But as we get closer, it for sure gets better, but it still is a bit pixelated. So there must be some kind of subsampling going on, compression going on in order for the Series S to be able to give this 4K 120 hertz. And you kind of see that displayed in the ledge here. There's this artifacting on the edges, the very corners of this edge, where the tessellation just quite isn't as good as something like the Series X. But the monitor's handling it fairly well. It's not blowing out detail in the bright areas or the dark areas. It's not crushing that detail. I will say that the actual movement as well is far, far better than what we saw in Back 4 Blood. And I think Back 4 Blood in its own has that motion blur. I see that when I'm using an RTX 3090. So I know for a fact that the game introduces some of that itself. I'm gonna try to get these guys to go out to bio. Wow, that was like the worst thing I've ever done in this game. I knew the dude was right there. Of course, FaZe runs away. They run away as we're trying to lock down this area. Wow, I don't even know how I lasted that long, dude. What? What I will say before I spawn in again here, there is a bit of noticeable lag here. It's not fantastic. It's not extremely unplayable. It's the Series S, you know, we're not talking high level. But what it is doing well is, you know, the contrast is actually fantastic in this game. It actually is doing a bit better just by default settings than what you might find in PC if it's not calibrated properly. Now, is the fidelity as good? No. But just as a simple baseline calibration, I think it's doing a great job here. I can't complain. So we're gonna jump into the next game here. I've got maybe 1 to 2 more. Follow me along and we'll wrap this thing up. So this next one comes to no surprise, it's Fortnite. Probably for the Xbox Series S, one of the more popular games out there for console right now. So because of the limited power the Series S has and how easy it is to run Fortnite, It's actually a very good match. So I can imagine that maybe some of you are looking at 4K monitors like, hey, I want to get the most out of my Series S. I'm not amazing at Fortnite. I'm pretty terrible. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. But so far, what I see is not disappointing. I will say a lot of that smearing is gone. That input delay, that kind of slow motion style feel, I'm not getting that on Fortnite right now. It's running quite well. This is pretty cool, this little tunnel thing here. It maybe is a little oversaturated, but that's kind of how Fortnite is. But up close detail is looking fantastic. It's a bit pixelated further on, but that's not the monitor. You know, that's Xbox. So I'm gonna see what happens when I consume this. Oh shoot, I don't even know what did I just do? You know, look at the purples though. The purples are looking solid, great detail and color. And the motion, I mean, I can go all day like this. I'm locked at 120 frames per second here. No variable refresh rate needed, really. So I have one last thing I want to go over here. I'm going to finish off this round so I don't leave my teammates hanging. But one last thing I want to go over here, and that's going to be some 4K content. 4K content on Disney Plus with HDR. So with an HDR certification of 400 peak nits of brightness, this guy here is basically at the minimum of the requirement to hit that certification. But we know it can make even a small difference. And with something like the Series S and the Series X, it actually makes more sense to pair your content to a TV because they are Dolby Vision certified, which is the highest tier of HDR certification. Nonetheless, of course, if you get this monitor, it may be an all-in-one for you, for content, for gaming, for whatever workload you have. It may be an all-in-one, which brings me to the first point. This guy has a built-in speaker and 3.5mm headphone jack on the back. As far as hooking up to a soundbar, if you did want to hook up to a soundbar, you'd have to go HDMI from the Xbox to the soundbar, and then one HDMI from the soundbar up to the TV. And that is, of course, if that soundbar supports HDMI 2.1 and 120 Hz pass-through. But diving in, we want to check out some of the HDR capability. And one of my favorites to do that with is going to be Star Wars. So with this being an edge-lit panel, and what we see here is it's doing some sort of switching to HDR. Not quite sure what's going on here. So this is a bit weird. It's taking time to switch over to HDR and it's not actually coming up right now. It's just kind of flashing. So I don't know what that means. It's like the HDMI came unplugged. But anyways, jumping back in, with this being an edge-lit full array panel, it has 8 dimmable zones on it, which means each kind of section here, there's about 4 on the bottom, 4 on the top. Let me pause here. Hopefully there's not much glare on the screen, you guys, and I can zoom in just a little bit on this, but what we see here is normally with black level performance, if you have these letter boxes here, that widescreen format, what you want to see is the background of this star field matching the background of this letterboxing, and you want it to be a good solid black color. So it's actually doing a good job here. The resolution doesn't look perfect. Like the Star Wars is a bit grainy. The text on it is a little weird. But overall, actually the black level performance is doing better than what I've seen in previous tests, to be honest with you. I kind of wanted to pause on this scene because it's a cool scene and there's a lot going on. We've got sand on the ground, we've got laser beams all over the place, we have explosions in the background, and we have this stormtrooper coming in. He's about to blast a bit of flame here with the flamethrower onto whatever's over here. This panel is doing a lot right now. You know, the intro of this movie is actually very difficult for most quality TVs to perform well. It's because there's more than just a picture that's very bright going on. We have a lot of bright scenes, a lot of bright objects behind a dark backdrop. What that causes that lighting panel to be challenged. It's challenged to dim this zone brighter than this zone, and there may be some overlap in those zones where it has to do more than it traditionally was meant for. Seeing this intro and how it's reacting, it's actually doing a good job. Will I say it's perfect? No. I think the brightness level is actually very, very low. It's very bright in this room, but there's almost this matte to the display because it's not bright enough. It just doesn't have that pop here. There should be this shine to the white of the Stormtrooper, but there's not. And there should be more detail in this lighting right here, but there's not. And a big reason for that, this panel there's only so much it can do. It's not able to get bright enough to give that higher range of dynamic color. That is one of the drawbacks, but overall, I'm fairly satisfied. I would use this as a supplemental content viewing monitor. It does double well as that. It's not fantastic. Probably stick to your TV if you have one. Well, I mean, that really wraps it up for me on my review for this Acer Nitro XV282. This, of course, is that 4K HDMI 2.1 monitor from Acer. I reviewed it on PC. If you want to watch that full video, it's on the channel. I'll put a link down below for you guys to check out. My overall thoughts, there's some good benefits here. HDMI 2.1 obviously being the best, that variable refresh rate feature being the best. Things where this is lacking, that HDR performance, it's okay. You know, and something like the Series S doesn't really bring out the full potential. If you have a Series X or a PS5, I would probably lean more heavily towards this, although the price tag is $899, and there may be some better options out there for that price tag. So I would say definitely consider this, but look at a few other monitors first. Don't rush out and buy this. There's no big thing, one thing on this that's gonna serve you more than another monitor out there that you can't just wait for and maybe get more benefit from something else that costs the same. Which leads me to tell you that I will be reviewing the Samsung Odyssey G78, the 28-inch IPS 4K HDMI 2.1 monitor. So subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you can get notified when that video goes live. And then I'll be doing a comparison versus this and the M28U that I have, so you can make a great buying decision for all three. Okay, you guys, thanks for watching the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.